Storytime of the worst birthday, and I'm pretty sure no one can top this. At the time, I was turning 25. I didn't want to do a big birthday party, so I did a small get-together. I held the mini get-together at my place, and it was around 10 to 15 of us. My friends and some of my boyfriend's friends all came. So as the party's starting, of course, we're taking shots, and my friend told me that she didn't want to drink. And I was like, why, you're pregnant or something? But I was joking. And she was like, I think so. I was like, by who? And she said that she did not know. She didn't know whether or not if she was pregnant, but she didn't want to be sick at the party, so she didn't drink. So everyone starts coming in, we're all having a good time. And she says she starts to feel lightheaded and she really didn't feel good. So I told her, to go inside of my room, lay down until she feels better. And she took some water and went to my room, which was the first mistake, which I'll get into in part 2. Part 2 of the worst birthday. So like I said, she was feeling sick and I sent her to my room. So as time goes on, I check on her just to make sure she's fine. But every time I looked, she was asleep. By the time the party was over, everybody passed out at my place. It was like a huge sleepover. So it had to be approximately 4:30 a.m. I wake up feeling a little nauseous. And when I got up and looked around, I didn't see my boyfriend. Unconsciously, I wasn't really thinking too much about him. I was just looking to get to the bathroom. Now my bathroom is connected to my room. So I walked through my bedroom to get to my bathroom. And remember, like I told y'all, I left my friend in my bed because she was feeling sick, because she was possibly pregnant. When I got done in the bathroom, I went back in the room to check on her. But when I looked at the bed, it looked like it had 2 bodies. And I'm like, who's in the bed? Because I didn't say anybody else could sleep in there. When I removed the covers, my best friend and boyfriend were naked in my bed. Hey guys, I get this question literally every day. Where have y'all been? Okay, so here are all the palettes that I used in literally all my videos. I'm literally wearing a makeup right now. They're from Vanity Cosmetics. This is the Daytime Aesthetic palette. The aesthetic is Gen Z and it's based off warm tone colors. Here's the swatches. This is the Midnight Aesthetic. There are more cool tone colors in here. Here are the swatches. This one is definitely my favorite. This one here is Vanity Diamond palette. This one is based off matte and glitter, and they all have like a matching set. And by the way, Vanity Cosmetics is my business. Started like 2 years ago. And if you're interested, the link is always in my bio. And right now we're having like a 30% off. So girlies, if you want 30% off, go ahead, use the code. I'm back by popular demands. Part 3 of the worst birthday ever. After catching both my boyfriend and best friend in my bed, I was so shocked and we got into this huge altercation. My best friend ran into the bathroom and locked herself in. I was manhandling my boyfriend. Also, by the way, during this entire time, he was still naked. We were going back and forth. My other best friends, of course, heard what was going on because we were so loud and so much happened that I don't even remember because I seriously blacked out. And I went crazy. One of my friends had to take me out. Literally, I had waited outside of my own apartment so my best friend and boyfriend can get their things and go. Even though my friends were trying to separate us and solve the situation, they were still going back and forth with him. Mind you, they still don't even know what's really going on. And one of my other friends started fighting him. Just so much craziness happened. Some of the stuff I'm embarrassed to say, but you're not gonna believe what I found out after kicking him out. Okay, so I know you guys really want part 4, so I'm back by popular demand. Part 4 of the worst birthday. So after the whole situation happened, of course, I broke up with my boyfriend, now ex, and I completely cut off my best friend. And as some of you guys already guessed, she was pregnant with his baby. And I didn't find out through my ex-best friend or my ex-boyfriend. I found out through one of my other friends, but she didn't keep the baby. She ended up getting a A-word. But both her and him still ended up staying together. I honestly think their whole situation is weird. And all my friends cut her off, except for one because they were cousins, which is like how I knew what was going on. And by the way, I wasn't upset over losing my relationship. I was upset about losing my best friend. Because at some point I knew our relationship was going to end because he has cheated before. And I went back like a dummy, but I kind of should have expected it. But I was really disappointed about my friend because we've been friends since kindergarten. Storytime on how I caught both of my best friends cheating on me with my boyfriend. Yes, both of them. So at the time, I was entering college, and one of my best friends went to the same school as me. My other best friend went to the same school as my boyfriend. And our schools were close. We were only like 10 minutes away from each other. Homecoming is when things started to get fishy. I asked my boyfriend if he wanted to come out to our homecoming games, and he said that he was busy. Then, of course, I asked my best friend, but she said she had cheerleading practices because she was trying to become a cheerleader. I don't know, they just always seem busy doing something around the same time. So then the holiday comes up and I visit my boyfriend's family for Christmas. I don't know, something in me just told me to look at his phone. And he was talking to my best friend, the one he went to school with. And the conversation was just too flirty. So I talked to my other best friend about it that I went to the same school with. And she was like, oh, I always knew something was weird about them too. I, of course, confronted my boyfriend about it and he said nothing was going on. So I decided to play reverse psychology on my best friend. Come back for part 2. Part 2 on how I caught my boyfriend cheating on me with 2 of my best friends. Like I said, I confronted my boyfriend about it and he pretended there was nothing going wrong. So I went to my best friend about it and I kind of did like a reverse psychology thing on her. I told her that my boyfriend told me everything that was going on. And I was like, did y'all even use protection? Not really knowing what's really going on. And she was like, I'm sorry, it was only a one-time thing. And that she was just drunk one night. And I was like, sis, you practically told on yourself because I was joking. And then she kind of like snitched on my other best friend. She was like, I wasn't the only one, you know. And of course I was like, what you mean? And she said a couple months back when we were in high school that my other best friend had slept with him also. The whole situation was just messy. I ended up cutting off my whole circle. And later on that freshman year, my ex-boyfriend started dating my ex-best friend. This is why you should never catch rides with strangers. So last year in June, one of my closest friends had a graduation party. She lived in New York, so I had to get a cab service to drive me to the party. By the way, I'm from Jersey. I think I paid like $150, but she had told me not to worry about the drive back and that she would drive me back. And plus, she was going to stay over because she really wanted to see my family. Fast forward, I get to the party. I had a great time. I met some of her newer college friends. And everyone seemed pretty cool. We took shots and had hookah. It was real fun. So after the party is over, I get myself ready and I went to my friend, expecting a ride back. But she was too drunk. One of her friends was like, spend the night. And, go back home tomorrow morning. But I told her I had work and school. The only person that was willing to take me back was one of her friend's cousin, and we're going to call him John. John said he had no problem taking me back, and 2 hours was nothing. All her friends said it'd be safer that way, so I was like, okay. But it turned out to be a big mistake. Come back for part 2. Part 2 of you should never take a ride from a stranger. So, like I said, John volunteered to take me home. Everyone said it was probably best because my best friend was drunk. So I gave John my address. We get in the car and we start heading home. 30 minutes into driving, he starts falling asleep on the road. We literally almost got into an accident. He said he needed to stop and nap for a few minutes. And y'all, if I knew how to drive, I probably would have drove. But he was the only liable driver with a license. And I was kind of nervous about him falling asleep on the road, so I was kind of okay with him stopping. He fell asleep immediately. Me, on the other hand, I stayed up till my phone died, and I knocked out. A couple minutes after sleeping, it sounded like the back door had closed, and it woke me up. I woke John up saying, we need to go. And he's like, what's going on? I told him the car back door literally slammed. He looked back and said, how? The door is locked. And I'm like, no, seriously, I heard the door slam. He was saying maybe you dreamed about it because there's no possible way this door opened. But I'm not dumb. I know what I heard. Come back for part 3. Goddamn, I hurt my knuckles. Hey, baby, go to bed. Throw it back and then she off the chain, she go berserk. I'm tryna fuck with her and her. Clean it up, yo, clean it up. She gon' throw it, stack. Am I the asshole for stealing $10,000 from my best friend? So back in 2020, when the pandemic started, my best friend had got laid off from her job. Me, I kind of already worked from home, so as far as working, I never got laid off. Since she was out of work, she was trying to find new ways of making income, and one of them was starting a business. She wanted to start a nail business, which, by the way, this girl could not do nails. And this is no way to bash my friend. She just didn't have the patience to even do her own nails. It took her maybe like 3 months to develop her business, but once she had got it running, she started making a lot of money. And I was happy for her, but I was confused on how she was making money because I've never seen her, do anyone's nails. She said in order for me to understand her business, she's not going to give the ins and outs unless I were to join her. And I was like, cool, I guess we both can make money, which I'll explain in part 2. Part 2 of me stealing $10,000 from my best friend. So I joined her business. Mind you, I didn't know exactly what it was about. I just knew it had something to do with nails, and she made little small posts of like nails. When I went to her house and saw her bedroom, she had a lot of press-on nails all over the place. So I was like, oh, she's selling press-on nails. That explains. She told me where she had got everything from, how she markets herself, just explains everything to me. And I was like, oh, wow, this is really great of what you done. I had asked her, like, how do I get started on? She was like, this business that she has started is a 6-figure business monthly, and that I would need to invest $10,000 into her business. And I was like, whoa, because $10,000 is like what I've like had saved up. But she had promised that she was making that amount of money, and she showed me her accounts. She literally said, girl, you can have $100K in your bank by next month. So of course I joined on, and I explained how she tricked me in part 3. Part 3 on how I stole $10,000 from my best friend. So after a month within joining, she said I would have to pay for some of the stock, which was okay, the marketing, the website, and I also had to help her run, the pages for her business. Well, our business now. I remember when I first had joined on, she was saying like the business is going to be slow for just a few weeks. And, I trusted her because that was my girl. And every month I just was still investing into her ads, still investing into promotion. On top of the $10,000, I was still investing more and more money. Give or take, literally after 6 months, we weren't gaining barely any sales. And she said that she wanted me out of the business because she felt like I wasn't doing much. Mind you, I invested majority of the money. During the process of her wanting to kick me off, I begged her to keep me to stay. Black Friday and Christmas came up, and we started to get a whole bunch of sales, and we made a give or take over $30,000. Knowing that she wanted me to leave, I transferred the money from our business account to my account. Storytime of my traumatic BBL surgery and why I believe no one should get them. So around the time I was 18, I just graduated high school. I've always been very insecure about my body. I used to get teased because of it. My legs were like pencil thin and my stomach was like a balloon. I tried working out and building glutes, but they would never grow and my stubborn stomach fat wouldn't move. So for the rest of the year, I saved up and started searching for the cheapest doctors because I couldn't afford to get a BBL. So I came across this one website, and the doctor was in Turkey. He did BBLs for as little as $3,000. So I asked my friend if she could come, and I scheduled an appointment a few months later. Went through a consultation and all that. As the time get closer, I started to do my research, and there's not many reviews, which should have been a red flag. When the time comes, we fly out, go to the office. The building said university, and it almost looked like a school. I asked the receptionist about it, and she said it was for doctors in training, which was an even bigger red flag, which I'll get into in part 2. Part 2 of my traumatic BBL surgery and why I believe no one should get them. I arrived, got prepped for surgery, they started marking me up so I know where the fat was being transferred. While they're doing this, there's students coming in watching, which by the way, they never informed me of. And at the time, I thought, well, that's what's supposed to happen, and I never said anything. A couple minutes later, I go through with the surgery. After coming out is when I started regretting it. In the beginning, my body was exactly what I wanted it to be with the faja. But without it, my stomach looked wrinkly and my butt had dimples. I was scared, so I called to see what was wrong. They said after surgery, I was supposed to hire a person to do lymphatic massages on me. They never talked to me about it, but they said they put it inside of my discharge papers. I couldn't find one, so they recommended me to a person that did them for cheap. Reason being because she was a student and they never told me that. The massage was painful, which I expected. I got 5 massages before I left. When I got to the airport with my friend, as soon as I walked on the plane, I passed out, and I'll get Part 3 of my traumatic BBL surgery and why I believe no one else should get them. After passing out at the airport,
Me and my friend were held back to wait 12 hours for the next flight. Luckily, we didn't have to pay, but we had to make multiple stops and sit next to strangers. I was in extreme pain even after taking the medication. When I got back home, I noticed my stomach was still wrinkly and my butt was pointy. I called my surgeon about it and he said it was because I wasn't getting enough massages. So I scheduled for multiple massages, more than what I really needed. The massages turned out to be more expensive than the actual BBL. After 3 months, my body still looked disformed. I cried about it and I constantly would call the surgeons just about every week. And I believe they got annoyed because they stopped answering all my calls. And I started to reach out to them through blocked numbers. After doing more research, I found that my doctor was still a student. No one was fully certified. In the time frame I got my surgery, the facility was getting sued for someone else who got a botched surgery. If you ever get a BBL, please do your research.
Cassie decided to wake up at 4 a.m. that morning to get ready for school. She needed to clear her head. And for those 3 hours she spent getting ready, she only thought about one thing.
Hey guys, I'm finally back with another story time. I've been on hiatus because I recently moved. Now that I'm settled, I'm posting story times every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. And if you're interested in sending an anonymous story time, definitely go check out my Instagram and DM me. Now let's get into the long-awaited story. This story time is how my psycho ex-best friend almost put my boyfriend in jail. We were friends for 6 years and things took a turn the last 2 years. Whenever she had problems, I listened to her, give her advice. But whenever I vented to her, I was ignored and the conversation was dry if we weren't speaking about her. After a while, I distanced myself and became friends with my now boyfriend. I started hanging out with him more and she started to get really jealous. She tried to get me to break up with him, saying he was ugly and broke. When I finally got to my breaking point of cutting her off, I went to her personally and tried to cut off our friendship. We were arguing, going back and forth. Towards the end of our conversation, she yelled and said, "My boyfriend forced himself on her." Let me know if you guys want a part 2. Part 2 on how my psycho ex-best friend almost put my boyfriend in jail. So me and her was arguing and I was seriously trying to end our relationship because it was really toxic. Towards the end of our conversation, she yelled at me saying that my boyfriend forced himself onto her. I was so confused on how to react. Even though she was crazy, this was my best friend for 6 years and I met my boyfriend maybe a couple months ago. And she has never said anything like this to me before. And I started thinking, maybe the reason why she hated our relationship is because of what he did to her. So of course, I immediately ended our relationship and also because she asked me if I could cut him off completely, and I did. A few days later, I asked her if she ever wanted to fill out a police report or tell her parents. She said she was embarrassed and wasn't ready to come out. 2 weeks later, my ex-boyfriend, pulled up at my house asking me why did I end the relationship. He came to me crying and I told him what she told me. He claimed that he barely has even spoken to the girl. The entire situation was really nasty. And at this point, I really didn't know who to believe. So I confronted her about it, which I'll get into in part 3. Part 3 on how my psycho ex-best friend almost put my boyfriend in jail. So I went ahead and went to my best friend's house and told her what he told me. She said that he was lying and he was just trying to separate us. She even told me to call the cops if he ever popped up at my house like that ever again. And I'm like, yeah, she's right. He shouldn't have popped up like that. But he was blocked, so he really had no other way of communicating with me. Anyway, over time, I kept asking her if she ever wanted to go to her parents about it or take legal action. And she would always say that she wasn't ready and wasn't comfortable. And of course, I had to understand that because those type of situations are really traumatic. I don't know, maybe a year after the situation, her attitude hasn't really changed. She was still the same psycho, crazy, and manipulative friend. I don't know, I think over time, I just started to get tired of her. Even after what happened to her. A couple months later, I still asked her again if she ever wanted to press charges. I think she got fed up with me asking, and she told me that the whole thing was a prank. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. She was like, yes, it was a prank, and the prank is over now, and it doesn't matter anymore. I blacked out. Storytime on why I don't trust male doctors, specifically the ones that work with the female body. So the summer of 2020, a couple days before my sister's birthday trip to Miami, this might be TMI, but my vajayjay was tingling. It felt weird, but I ignored it. The next day, it was so painful that I couldn't even sit down. But I assumed that it was an ingrown hair because I would get them time to time. Anyways, later that night, I met up with my boyfriend to go to his house. As we were walking, he noticed that I was limping. I, of course, told him my whole situation about what was going on down there. He said, the pain is hurting to the point where you're limping. You should head to the hospital. So we went to the hospital immediately so I could find out what was going on. So we went to the hospital immediately so we could find out what was going on. And there were times of that night my boyfriend assumed that I had some type of STD, which wasn't the case. When the first doctor saw me and checked me out, they were so confused what was going on, so they brought in a different doctor. And I'll get into what exactly that doctor did to my body in part 2. Part 2 on why I do not trust male doctors, specifically the ones that work with the female body. So the second doctor came in and he told me to open up my legs. And this man immediately took 3 fingers and shoved it in. When I tell you that was the most painful experience I've ever had in my life, it was so painful. More painful than childbirth. He was twisting his fingers as though he was looking for something. He couldn't tell me exactly what it was, but he said that I should be fine. Maybe 5 minutes later, a nurse came in. She said the doctor said that I had lymph nodes, and they prescribed me with 3 different drugs. And they put a shot in my butt. If you have the option to get in your arm, get it in your arm. When I got done, I went back home, started taking the drugs. The drugs made me feel really sick. I was shaky, fatigued, getting heat flashes, nausea, and my heart was racing super fast. And still with the drugs, the pain was not going away. A few days later, I went back to the hospital because the drugs just weren't working. And when I got checked out, I was diagnosed with something completely different than what I was told, which I will be getting into in part 3. Part 3 on why I do not trust male doctors, specifically the ones that work with female bodies. So like I said, I went back to the ER and was diagnosed with something completely different. So all the prescriptions that the doctors had me taking were the wrong drugs. So the process of me being in the hospital, a different doctor had checked me out. When I told the other doctor what I had, or what I was told by their other doctor, he was like, lymph nodes? Who told you that? I said, one of your doctors, and he gasped. And he told me that I had a Bartholome cyst. He said he could drain it, but there's a risk of it coming back, and it did. And I told him, please drain it because it was very painful. The first step to draining it was numbing it, and he had to prick my vajayjay 10 times with the needle, which was also painful. Then he had to make a cut to drain it. At that point, I was about to pass out because I could literally feel everything. The numbing was not working. Plus, I was extremely embarrassed because there were like 5 other men with my legs busted open. And I cried the entire process. No one asked if I was okay. They rushed the whole process.
Why does everybody think we fucked?
Cause you on my dick. Chill.
Storytime on how my homophobic boyfriend turned out to be actually gay. So my sophomore year of college is actually when I met my boyfriend, which by the way we're calling Justin. Justin had just transferred over and he was a junior. And before anyone comes at me for me being with a homophobic, well, at the time I didn't know he was. And I didn't exactly know what homophobic was. But anyway, back to our relationship. I met him at a Greek party. We talked, swapped numbers, and then the rest was history. Well, history for the next couple months. I would notice little small things in our relationship. Like he never liked any of the guy friends I had, specifically the gay friends I had. He always had something to say about them regarding their sexuality. Not even that. There were times about how he would just randomly talk about how gay people are disgusting. And there was one time at this party where he got into a fight with one of my friends, who was, by the way, gay. And this is when I found out he was gay. I'm gonna come back for part 2. Part 2 on how I found out my homophobic boyfriend was gay. So, like I said, we were at a party and he got into it with one of my friends. Now, the whole situation started is when my friend wanted to go get me a drink. And by the way, we all came to the party together. And my boyfriend didn't like that. And he said that he would get it. My friend was like, no, it's cool. I got it. And then they just started bickering back and forth. Of course, my boyfriend was like, oh, you're not her man. You're a sissy. You're that, da-da-da-da-da. Just going off on him. And I was telling him to calm down. It's not that serious. And my friend left the area where we went to go get himself a drink, came back, and threw the drink on my boyfriend. And I was so confused because I thought he was trying to leave the situation alone. And my boyfriend got up and just immediately started going in on him. So they got into it, and my best friend was beat up real bad. When I got up and, tried to clean him off, my friend was like, oh, you need to go talk to your boyfriend about what happened last night. And I'm like, last night? Y'all come back for... Part 3 on how I found out my homophobic boyfriend was gay. So after their fight or whatever, my friend was messed up real bad. I picked him up, try to help him out. And of course, I was upset about the whole situation, but my boyfriend really blacked out on him, which I thought was unnecessary. Anyways, my friend was really frustrated, was really irritated, and literally out of nowhere, he was tell her about last night. And I'm like, what happened last night? He was like, oh, since you want to talk about me being gay, talk about what you do. And I'm looking at him like, what? In my head, I'm still not thinking he's gay. I'm thinking maybe he cheated on me with some girl. But regardless, I still would be upset. And my friend was like, I'm sorry to tell you, but he was with me last night. And I'm looking and I'm chuckling a little bit wait, huh? He's saying after the little arguments that we've been having in our relationship that he would go to my friend's dorm room and they would be messing around. And my boyfriend, of course, the entire time, he's like, that's not true. He's lying. You gonna trust this sissy boy? Just